Welcome to episode 12 of Tailoring Talk with me, Roberto Revilla. The wedding industry has been going through a tough time lately, and it's been the last year more than ever that in order to survive, we've needed to pull together and make really good friends. My next guest is known within our industry as a master connector, innovator, mentor, and self-described all-round busybody. I'm so pleased to be joined by my friend, owner of Wedding Espresso, James Pearson. James, how are you, my friend?
I'm very good, Roberto. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. I apologise first of all because I'm sitting here in front of you, not in a suit as you would normally expect me, but in my cycling lycra, all hot and sweaty. Nice way to start off an episode. So I do apologise, but I literally just got...
I'm going to be perfectly honest, actually, the sight of a sweaty Bobby is actually throwing me off a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm all good.
Yeah, I've got to keep you on your toes. So yeah, I just got back from my second vaccination. I decided that I would cycle up there, because why not? Because I figure I might get a little bit woozy later on in the day. I did get told off for cycling up there, though. And they said, can you not cycle back? And I said, well, I'm not really wanting to leave my very expensive road bike sort of tied to a lamppost in the middle of Finchley, thank you very much. But anyway, I'm just glad to get it.
Is it not an option to wheel it back?
It was about 10 miles, so I didn't really fancy doing that. Yeah, so anyway, it was all kind of mostly downhill, so it wasn't a problem. But glad to get that out of the way. So I've just booked today and tomorrow off so that I can spend some time with some lovely people like you and get some work done behind the scenes.
Excellent.
So we met, probably a couple years ago, actually.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, if not earlier than that. But you and your lovely wife, Rachel, have been running Wedding Espresso for a little while now, which has been an online publication, and it's kind of evolved over the years. And you also wrote a book as well, which was published. So how have the last few years been for you?
Yeah, I'm just going to go straight in there and just say pretty crazy. If I wind the clock back, I've been involved in the wedding industry for about 15 years. So I spent a decade filming weddings, cut my teeth really when that side of the industry was really in its sort of infancy. And, you could do a Google search for wedding videography and find 6 people up and down the country. So found myself going all over the place. It was a very exciting time. And I think innovation's sort of always been in my blood, and I'm fascinated, well, really, I'm just going to say compelled to try to find a different way through all the time, because I think I get bored really easily. So always looking for a way to shake things up. And there were a few sort of key moments in that wedding filming career that sort of really shone. And that was when I rewatched, the first one was when I rewatched Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And I saw some scenes where, what's the kid's name? I forget now. Danny is being chased through the halls. He's being chased through the halls, and he's riding his little trike. And I thought, wow, what a shot, actually. And it kind of stuck out to me because it was so like full of motion, and you followed Danny through all these halls, and it was really kind of mesmerizing and confusing visually. And so I kind of researched it and discovered that there was a piece of kit called a glide cam, which was invented for that film to shoot that scene. And I looked into it and found out you could buy them from America. So I had one shipped over. It cost me about £2,500, and started using it at weddings. And jaws dropped, for want of a better way of explaining it. And that was kind of like my first.
Yeah, no one can see me right now, but my jaw's on the floor as well.
It was a moment. It looked ridiculous because it had to be a full body pack with like a spring-loaded suspension arm, which the camera sat on. Now, the idea is that the whole thing is very carefully balanced. So, sorry, was that attached to you? It is, you wear it. Yeah, it looks a bit like riot gear, unfortunately. But the idea is that it distributes the weight of the camera across your body and then takes out all of your movement. So every step you take would normally shake the camera. This thing would absorb the shock. So the camera was free flowing. And this at the time was very innovative.
So the modern equivalent, I guess, would be what they call a gimbal.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And obviously, like, fast forward to today, and you've got little handheld gimbals and things, and it's all a lot easier to do. But back in the day, it was, I think to this day, I haven't had anybody challenge me on this, but I was the first UK person to import a glide cam and use it at a wedding.
Wow. And how was it? I'm guessing it's just that shot that influenced you and the technique used behind it, as opposed to visually the actual vision of Danny cycling up a hotel corridor and seeing those two twins and then blood just streaming through. Because as you were describing all of that, that's immediately where my mind went. Regular listeners will know that my mind goes to some weird places, and anyone who listens to me on the other podcast that I'm involved with, Play Pause Turn, will also know that my mind goes to some really weird places. But I'm just visualizing you cackling with glee, having set your wedding couples up at the end of the aisle, and then, you know, some special effects team with sort of rivers of blood about to stream down as the ring bearer cycles up the aisle on a trike. But that's not what you were.
Really,
that's not what you were going for, was it?
Not Psycho fans, Shining fans. They'd love it. They'd love it. The only manifestation of that, really, Bobby, was when I would chase a golf cart, a couple riding in a golf cart across a field, and I'm chasing them with a glide cam. That's about the closest we came. There was no blood. Nobody actually fell off the golf cart. So it's all good. It's all good. But I've had my couples do all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah, I actually, you know, knowing you, I can imagine that as well, that you'd be quite obviously very fun to work with, but you'd also just be doing things in a different way. Because with wedding videographers, I mean, you want your wedding video to be memorable for all the right reasons, because there's so much stress involved with that day. And very often couples don't really remember much about it. It starts obviously when they set a date, and then there's this whole lead up to it. And then when the actual day happens, it just goes by in the blink of an eye. So your wedding video is so important. And I'm guessing you must have had a lot of success and a lot of referral work afterwards, because knowing you as I do, you're never going to be someone who's just going to be a sort of stand and point sort of person. You know, I can imagine you corralling your couples and having some sort of vision in your head, bearing in mind the location and the personality of the couples and so on.
It's totally true. I would go to every wedding with a trick up my sleeve. Like, I'd research something I wanted to do. Usually kind of like, just exploring the possibilities of what was safe and sensible, but at the same time trying to push the boundaries all the time. It was a weird push-pull. And it's a funny thing that you say about, the wedding videos being so important. I remember that my favourite testimonial that I ever received was the bride contacted me and she said, we've watched it. We've watched 100 times or whatever, and we're just floods of tears and the family love it and stuff. But she said, if the house was burning down, I'd grab the wedding video. And I was thinking, So this record that I created for you is now your most important possession in the world. I thought, I've done it. That's it.
That's the ultimate testimonial, I think. So how long was it before you then decided to transition out of being a wedding videographer? And what did you go on to do next? And why did you stop doing it?
Yeah, good questions. So it was a transition. It wasn't a hard stop. There was a new wave of wedding film coming across from the States. I think it would have been about mid-2000. There was a huge shift in tone from America. And wedding films were becoming very cinematic, which is possibly the style that we have today still. But it was full of like bombastic music and hard cuts and really dramatic scenes, and the whole thing had changed. And I guess the people at the front of the field are really, really pushing the change. They can't sit still. They're a bit like me. And out of all of that development came a style called stop motion, which is where you would take thousands and thousands of still images, but you had the power to animate. So if you think of like clay model stuff, like Morph, or even like, I don't know, Valley of the Gwangi, where you've got the dinosaurs fighting and the little rubber models, and people would move them around one frame at a time. Take the shot, move, take the shot, move, take the shot. And so you could have ties unraveling out of boxes. And it was a whole new way of expressing people's detail in their wedding. We shot a wedding for a couple that were obsessed with dinosaurs. Dinosaurs was a big part of their relationship, and I forget why. And they had dinosaurs everywhere, on the bar, on the tables. They were hidden little dinosaurs. And part of the fun for me was just going around finding the dinosaurs and putting like little dinosaur stories together by animating the dinosaurs and moving them around. They thought it was fantastic. Another little trick was they'd actually had a hand-drawn map of their kind of like wedding location, showing the guests how the flow of the day would go around these various areas. And so we took a copy home, and I bought their favorite dinosaur. I bought like a little model of it. And then I had the dinosaur kind of like move around the map as the wedding video went along to sort of say where these things were happening in the day. And again, it's just those little touches like that can lift what everybody's already seen before into something a little bit new. Sometimes it goes too far and you've got to reel it back in. But sometimes you have a breakthrough and it changes the game. So stop motion was cool. But it also didn't really take off in this country. It was a very, very, very niche product. So at the time, we were talking about family planning, and Rachel and I were obviously, away most weekends shooting weddings, and we just thought this won't fly. And in our particular situation, our parents live quite far away and are quite old, so we don't necessarily have a great kind of like support system in place for looking after kids. So it would have to be something that we took very seriously. And we decided that filming weddings really wasn't feasible anymore. So out of that was really born Wedding Espresso, but it was a 2-step process. I initially I really had this feeling that having lived a decade of wedding directories and a decade of people being brands in the wedding industry and websites, there was very little kind of humanity in it unless you went to a wedding fair. And I wanted to put people first. That was kind of the vision. And so I tried it in a local town doing little video blogs for businesses. And that was pretty successful. But I very quickly discovered that there's a section of the marketplace that will be interested in any given product. And if the marketplace isn't big enough, you can't thrive because you're limited by the size of what you've set out to do. And so the town plan didn't pan out. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go straight back into the wedding industry. I'm going to take that plan, that model, and I'm going to do it in the wedding industry. And 3 years ago, putting people on Zoom or Skype calls was incredibly revolutionary. I mean, we laugh about it today because we're all sick of it. But at the time, that was something brand new. It was putting the people out there so that people could skip the kind of the words and just get straight to the personalities and, the vibe of what these people were about.
It's almost like now we've come full. I don't know if this has become a new challenge for you, but we've almost come full circle with it having been novel. You got in there at that time when no one else was doing it. We've now had nearly 18 months of meeting each other virtually and so on. And for the most part, people are sick of it. And we're realizing all the things that we take for granted when we do things by video. It's, just the little things that happen when you're interacting with people face to face.
This is right.
So has that now has there been a bit of video fatigue set in with what you've been doing?
Yeah, there's a term I really like. It's called banner blindness, applied to advertising. And it's basically describes the process of someone going through scrolling through a news feed and just phasing out stuff that they've already seen 1,000 times. And the feeling very much is that that has now come to pass because of lockdown. I think we have that video banner blindness. I mean, when I first really switched back on after sort of lockdown, where the wedding industry was creaking back up, my newsfeed was just full of brand new face-to-face video call type talks. Everybody's doing it. And so I realized that, we weren't going to be able to proceed in that manner because that boat has sailed. what was innovative 3 years ago is now commonplace. So it's time for something new.
But then at the same time, wedding shows aren't exactly the most pleasant experiences, because I remember when we were going through the process of sorting out our own wedding, I remember we went to one wedding show as a couple. So it was one of those big national shows that was at Excel in London, or maybe the other one, Olympia. It was Olympia.
Okay, yep.
And it was pandemonium. I mean, you could not move. It was just a sea of brides and brides-to-be. Sorry, potential brides-to-be and brides-to-be. Now, I say potential brides-to-be because there's a little story. So, in this sort of sea of human beings, I got separated from my wife and her friends. And it was literally just one of those things where, in a moment, they just kind of diverted off suddenly to some stall that they wanted to go and look at. And then hundreds of women just got in between me and my other half and just carried me in the opposite direction. And so, anyway, so I'm trying to find my way back to them. And I get stopped by this lady. And she says to me, she's holding up 2 dresses. And she said, "What do you think?" And I said to her, "Shouldn't you be asking your fiancé that?" And she said, "Oh, I'm not engaged. I haven't even got a boyfriend. I'm just here to buy my wedding dress. I'll worry about all that later." It's absolute madness. And I swore to myself that I would never, ever want to go to one of those ever again, either as someone planning their wedding or even as a supplier, because it was just too much. I don't understand how anyone can think that that is a pleasant experience in any way, shape or form.
I'm going to be honest, I think they've got better. Hand on heart, I never booked a wedding from a wedding fair. But I think they have improved dramatically. I mean, they call a lot of the good ones are wedding shows now, aren't they? They do a lot more. They have entertainment. They're a lot more than they were. But at the same time, it is difficult in that loud, noisy, crowded space really to have like an intimate connection with somebody and talk about something that is deeply personal and very, very important.
So how do we shake that up then, James? Or what have you been working on? Because I know that you've got some sort of plot going on in that head of yours.
There's always a plot going on in the brain space, my brain palace. So yeah, I don't honestly have an answer to that question. I can tell you what has been happening, and through the process of working on Wedding Espresso and working with wedding suppliers, I think I've come around to sort of discovering that I always believed that I wasn't a massive people person necessarily, but I've discovered like I do actually love people and I'm fascinated by them. And one of like my great joys in life now is bringing people together to accomplish something greater. And I kind of coined a phrase for it. I called it Stonehenging. And that's like, it's impossible to build something miraculous without there being many hands involved. And I had a great time writing a book, a wedding planning book. It was based on all those years' experience of filming weddings. And to be honest, by the end of that decade, I was giving out like a big printout of information about how to plan a wedding day, just simple things that help brides and grooms understand the logistics from the supplier's perspective.
Yeah.
And how to get the shots that they want and how to get the outcomes that they want. And that sort of folded into a book that we wrote, largely sort of drawing from our own wedding, sharing stories about that. And that was great. I loved that. But it was all from one perspective. And the next obvious step was to write a book with other wedding suppliers. So we published last year, just as lockdown hit, we published Carpe Wedding Diem Baby, which was a collection of 13 supplier stories. But really based on like a framework that I'd provided so that they were able to tap into the same kind of vibe. And each chapter has the same vibe, and it's wonderful. I don't think there's another book like it in the marketplace, certainly not in the wedding industry. And again, we distributed, I think we tapped out at about 4,000 copies of that. at the beginning of lockdown. And again, it sort of became a personal mission to just try to pump some positive energy out in a time of crisis. Yeah. And that's what that book became. It became a beacon of hope. Ultimately, the everything did sort of grind to a halt, and we stopped pushing the book. It's still there. People can still go and grab it. But that was a very exciting thing. And as for the future, I think it's just a question of, we're still not quite there. It's still a little bit up in the air. Opinions are not quite set on what's going to happen or what isn't going to happen. And I think to a certain extent, it's a little bit of a waiting game and just feeling it out.
Yeah, so obviously we've had a really tough 18 months, as so many have. But May was super busy. So when we were allowed to reopen in mid-April, it was sort of reasonably busy the first couple of weeks back. And then May just exploded.
Wow.
And we just have quite a few weddings that are all emergencies as well, because I think couples are sort of like, oh right, let's just get it done.
Sure.
I think couples to be are in two categories at the moment. It's either we want to get married, let's get it done, we'll worry about the big celebration, we'll do that in a year's time or something. And then you've got other couples who are, no, I'm not compromising on my big day. And so I think we've got this rush of weddings that are going to happen this year, come what may, because they want to just get it done. But then 2022, 2023 are going to be huge. I mean, I've heard stories that it's very difficult to book the most popular wedding venues.
I bet, yes.
A year, 2 years in advance. Exactly. So I just... There is definitely going to be this pent-up demand that is going to flood all of us in this industry. And we've got to hold on to that positivity. But amongst other suppliers, because I'm just starting to sort of reach out to start networking with other suppliers, because it makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of cross-referral business that we can all give each other and help each other out. But I have been finding that I kind of went into it. I'm one of those people who, I think some people would describe me as an excitable puppy. So when I meet new people, even though I'm quite introverted, when I push myself to do it, I am very much like a dog. I will come up to you and I want to know all about you and I want to be your friend and I want to help you as much as I can. But I'm finding a little bit of resistance from people in our industry. Not everybody, but a lot of people are still, they're still a bit, I guess, I understand it. They're feeling a bit bruised and battered from the last 12, 14 months, but they've lost hope. And I don't think that they should.
I'm in agreement with you, Roberto. Historically, just to sort of clarify it before I go into any detail, I think wedding suppliers, mostly creative people, or have a creative flair. And I love creative people, but I also think that the wedding industry can be quite cliquey. And I think it stems from a place of protection, really, because for a lot of wedding suppliers, the wedding industry is hard. A lot of people come into the wedding industry because from the outside, it seems like a booming industry, lots of money to be made, quick bucks, everybody's happy. It isn't true. It's hard. It's hard in a sense that a lot of people, in order to really get their passion into a wedding business, have to work a second job. That's a reality for a lot of people. To actually go full time, that's a huge accomplishment. So I think there is a lot of mental health issues in the wedding industry. I think people struggle with it a lot. And I think a lot of the time, people don't have the confidence necessarily to put themselves out there. And just to sort of rewind to what you said about yourself, I picked up straight away that you were somebody that I was definitely going to connect with. We were going to get along like a house on fire, because I saw that enthusiasm and that willingness. And I don't see you backing down, and I don't see you kind of having to hide. I think you're very upfront about everything. You're very sort of honest. You wear it on your sleeve. You know where you want to go, and you're prepared to do whatever it takes to get there. And that's awesome. So it would be nice if everybody sort of really had that attitude. But I guess when you described that resistance that you were meeting with people, I would like to suggest that it's possibly because they don't have that confidence within themselves to put themselves out there. And especially now with the lockdown situation, I think it's really rocked the boat. Even for suppliers who, are putting positive vibes out there and are being positive and are being supportive and are doing all they can. Behind the scenes, things are still really, really hard, really, really difficult for them.
Yeah. I don't always know, thank you so much for that, by the way. I don't always know where I want to go. But what I do, and, James and I are talking here, and we're hoping that a lot of our colleagues within the wedding industry will hear this, and hopefully it will be of some help. And, but I'd love to kind of know anyone who wants to share their thoughts and feelings, email us, drop a note in comments. If you want to stay anonymous, that's absolutely fine as well. But it would be really, really nice to get a really good sense check of how people are feeling and get some stories as well. So yeah, as I was just saying, I don't always know where I'm going, but the one thing I do know is that if you stay still, you die. It's as simple as that. No, there's no magic bullet. We're all getting attacked by people that are saying, you're trying to sell us services like, selling to people via LinkedIn and SEO services and all these magic bullets that will suddenly cure all your business woes overnight and start bringing sales in. I know that some suppliers, as there are other tailors in my industry out there, that over the last 12, 18 months have just buried their heads in the sand and said, everything stopped, I'll just wait for it to come back magically and hope that I can survive till then. It might not happen.
Of course.
I mean, things will come back. but things just magically happening, that's very unlikely to happen. If you don't put yourself out there, then you're going to, for me, it's just you're just digging a bigger hole for yourself. So you've got to try. And, look, the last three, particularly summer 2020, I mean, that was a terrible time. My mental health was in the bin. I didn't know what to do. Our business was completely shut. Obviously, nothing was happening. People weren't at the office. People weren't going planning their weddings because all of that was put on hold. We had no income coming in because we had no government support. So I did the next best thing that I could, which was to say, right, who's hiring right now? And so that was my side hustle for the summer. I went and just did delivery and Uber Eats. So I was out early morning, and then I would come back for a couple of hours when there was the sort of mid-morning lull. Then I would go out again at about 11:30 for the lunchtime rush. And then I'd come back again, and then I would work a couple of hours in my business. And then I would leave again at about 5 p.m, and I would then be working, riding around on my scooter till about, sometimes midnight.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how late people order takeaway.
It always surprises me.
So that's what I was doing, and it was quite. It was character building, to use a cliche. Sometimes it was quite debilitating. I had a couple of incidents because my scooter is sign written, and so sometimes I'd be parked outside somewhere waiting to pick a delivery up, and you'd get some yobs stood outside that would then Google me and then go. I remember one night in Camden, I actually was spat at. They started off with, you're supposed to be some big shot tailor. Look at you, you're delivering burgers.
Oh, man.
And I was like, well, I'm just doing it just to get by in the meantime because my business is closed. And then they just spat at me like I was worthless. I take the positive from that experience because for two reasons. Number one, it made me experience what those guys and women do every day who do those types of jobs. I know exactly what they go through. So it's given me more empathy for them, and it's made me feel grateful for my own situation. The second thing that it did is it gave me space. it gave me, rather than sort of wallowing in a heap on my sofa, binge watching Netflix and stuff and hoping that magically the world would be put right
itself
some morning that exactly. It just gave me space away from doing those sorts of things. And in between the pickups and the drop-offs, when I was on my bike, I was able to think, and I was able to just get the Rubik's Cube out that resides somewhere in the recesses of my mind and start turning the sides of the Rubik's Cube to try and work out this problem that we are all facing right now and have been facing. And basically, I came to the conclusion that people are still going to get married. People are still going to be wearing clothes. So for me, it's those two things are very important together.
Yep, of course.
When naked weddings become a thing, then I'm in real trouble.
Might have to rethink it entirely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That would make the stop motion videography thing become a whole lot more interesting. And there were going to be people out there that were still going to be planning things. So if you think about it, whatever you do, whether you're, we're all in sales essentially. We're all selling products and services, and sales is a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. Mm-hmm. The haystack just got bigger. So you just got to roll your sleeves up and get into this much bigger haystack, but the needles are still there.
It's a great analogy. I really like that. The imagery is really strong. Yeah.
I thought you'd like that one because your brain works in a very visual way, which is why you were such a good videographer, obviously. I on one hand, I do get people sort of desperation, despair, pessimism, and so on. But at the same time, we are coming out of it, and we've all got to be ready for that. So rather than sort of just hoping that, one morning your business is going to come flooding back, is it not better to sort of start getting ready for it to come back? And even maybe just try and put yourself out there. Because if people don't know about you, they're going to go to the next person that does what you do, that is putting themselves out there. And you don't want to be in that position.
Yeah, I was quite closely involved with talking to a lot of people about this very issue, and really sort of maintaining contact and finding out where people were and what they've been doing and how they've been coping. And one of the things that really hit a lot of people was this sense of imposter syndrome. Like, it's quite difficult anyway to put yourself out there. Let's say, you're one of the sort of public facing people. So you're a photographer, a celebrant, a videographer, a band, any of those people that are really involved with the people on the day. At times, it can be very difficult to stand up and do that job, to be ever present and visible and unguarded. And I think this sense of kind of imposter syndrome kicked in because if you don't keep up, it's like exercise. If you don't keep up doing that job, the terror sinks in of like, oh, am I going to be able to perform to the standard that's required? And then the added pressure of a wedding day, it's like, it's actually unrepeatable. It's a single take. And it's one of the very rare things that can't be repeated, at least not very easily. And so the pressure is super high to deliver that performance. And so a lot of people, I think, are probably still suffering from that a little bit. The first wedding back after a year off would be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
But also full of joy to be back doing it. So a double-edged sword.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, the thing is as well is that, I was talking to someone else the other day and I was just saying that, the first time back in the workroom actually seeing someone, luckily it was an existing customer, but I just didn't know what to say to them.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
I wasn't used to seeing people anymore. So, firstly, you've got that whole awkward thing because when I see a lot of my long-standing customers, shake hands is a given, but with a lot of them, we actually hug when we see each other because these people have become friends and mentors over the years, and I love them to bits. So there's that first social awkwardness to get over, which is, you walk towards each other and it's, so what are we doing? Do we fist bump, elbow? It's almost like
No
a
one's
kind of
really
move
sure.
now. It's like go to shake, change to a fist, move to an elbow, but the other person does exactly the same thing but in a different order. So you're all over the place, right? And so there's that first of all. Then there's the whole mask issue, and then after that, it's basically, the old cliched things that you say. So how have you been? What have you been up to? Well, I haven't really been doing anything because I've been stuck in my house for the last 14 months. What about you? Well, yeah, same thing. Okay, so there's no new experiences or anything to talk about, so we can't do the small talk stuff. Then you need to... So then what's left? What are you here for? Get down to business.
Yeah, and then that's the awkwardness.
Yeah, when you're quite amiable and you're not a pushy as a salesperson, that is very awkward. So I was basically just getting fabric folders and just throwing it at them and just saying, okay, well, just have a look through and just decide what you want, because I don't know what to do anymore. That didn't actually last very long. Muscle memory then kicked in and I was back to my old self very quickly.
Sure.
But it got me thinking that we owe it to ourselves to keep ourselves in shape, to use your exercise analogy, so that we are ready and that we are on top of our game the moment that it all starts to hit back.
Too true.
You don't want to be flabby and slow off the starting line. So it's thinking about everyone in their individual sort of businesses. What are the things you need to do to keep on top of things and make sure that you're ready? It's almost like live every single day as if things are going to be back to normal tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of that, haven't we? We've seen a lot of suppliers pivot and use whatever skills or craft they have left or available to them to bash out something new. And I think this lockdown period has actually been a hive of kind of creative thinking and problem solving. And for anybody that leaned into the process, like yourself, I think they've come out stronger.
Yeah. Well, look at Rachel, who we were both with last week when we were doing wedding tennis. That was so much fun. Baker shoe, exactly. I mean, what a great concept, because she said that sort of came out of just an accident that happened. I don't know if it was at her wedding.
So the basic story is that brides and grooms would feed each other cake traditionally, and when her husband went to give her some, he just took a great big handful and just smacked it in her face, full on, coated her face in it, and I think it dripped off and then onto her shoes. So then the idea for sort of cake shoes was born. It's just very, very, very bizarre, but very, very cool at the same time.
Exactly. I'm hoping to have Rachel on this thing. She said she'd do it, so hopefully I'll be able to get that scheduled and make it happen in the coming weeks. But
amazing. It's a great story.
But the point is that she started a business during the pandemic from that simple idea, and looks like it's taken off for her. It's extremely unique. No one else is doing it, and it's a lot of fun as well. So, when you're going for what I would probably say is the less traditional part of the wedding industry, which is obviously still quite a big segment of couples who want to do things differently, people like Rachel are just finding those little niches. Whether it's by design or happy accident, it doesn't matter. The point is that she's actually just rolled her sleeves up and just decided to give it a go. And dared to do it, I think, at the same time, because it is so creative, it is so out there. Exactly. Isn't that the old Paris saying, "He who dares wins"? We'll update it to "They who dare wins."
There's another saying that I really, really like, and it's fail fast. It's like, if you're going to try something, just get on with it and put out the minimum viable product and see if it sticks. And obviously, in her case, that's what she's done, and it has. And that's brilliant. Yeah.
So, going back to what we did last week, so we recorded something that you called Wedding Tennis, which basically you got two suppliers we'd never met before. To be honest, I obviously haven't done much with other suppliers today anyway. And then sort of pitted us together in this battle of wills, and you had some pre-prepared questions for us. that you then fired at us, and we had to give our answers, obviously honestly, but with humour if we could. A lot of people are saying I cheated because, I had my dog with me, but at the end of the day...
We didn't have that in the rules, though, did we? We didn't say anything about props or animals or pets or...
That's it, exactly. Yeah. That's it. And that wasn't intentional. I mean, he's always by my side. I mean, weirdly, I know he's actually behind me. There we go. But it was a lot of fun, but B, it was just a really nice way to meet a new person without really much other pressure, other than the pressure you were putting on us with your questions. But it was a lot of fun. And, Rachel and I have connected offline, online on Instagram and so on. And as I say, we'll hopefully be able to take that offline in the future and help each other out. But is that something that you would see yourself doing more of, or maybe even formulating some sort of business idea around that sort of concept of connecting suppliers together? Because I think if we approach each other directly, that's where the kind of weirdness kind of creeps in, because people are very cliquey. You're absolutely right. But if you've got someone who's kind of the middleman, who's bringing people together, I don't know. I just kind of saw that as, if ever someone said to me, oh, who would you think of for that sort of role? I would just think of you and Rachel, immediately. But is that something that's been in the kind of thinking process for you?
Interesting. Yeah, like I said, for starters, I'm glad you enjoyed it. That is an example of doing something a bit scary. That's an example of introducing something that could go wrong. And it's not until you try these things, and you have to have a little bit of faith in yourself and say, well, I believe that I can get this to work. And, 9 out of 10 times it will work. And sometimes it works at about 75%, and you think, well, okay, there's room for improvement. Let's keep going. So yes, I think part of the DNA of Wedding Espresso has always been bringing people together. Because if I go back to my sort of concept of Stonehenging, I like it when people come together to build something better. So, far being from my own personal agenda or ego-centric idea, it's like you said, it's more about if we can do something fun together and have a good time, and put some positive stuff out into the world, then we're making the world a slightly better place by doing that. But at the same time, I'm giving you and Rachel an introduction that, like you said, is not formal, but is just more human and more realistic. And that's sort of how people meet in the real world. So yes, it's a very interesting thing for me. And it's come from a place of almost slight insecurity, because when you imagine these things, like you said, you think everybody would want a more formal approach. I'm thinking of kind of like business breakfast meetings and very structured and professional. But my plan was to sort of tip that on its head and try something completely different. And I'm so glad it worked. And now it's sort of, back into the lab to try to work out how to scale that up and make it a bigger thing for more people and get more of that connection going. That's what I want to see.
Yeah. See, so do I. That's why in my very Machiavellian way, I'm, sort of trying to do my Jedi mind tricks on you. It's like, go, James.
Manifested.
There it is. Yeah, I've just planted the seeds, and now it's germinating in that brain of yours. It's brilliant. I love it.
That's it. It's kicking off.
But you see, that's the thing. So you mentioned the other way of doing it, which has been around for years, which are the sort of BNI type things where you have that formal sit-down breakfast and it's a referral stroke networking thing. And it is very, very structured. Everybody has to do an elevator pitch. I've been to some of those very early in my career, and I didn't last long in them, because what I realised is that everyone sat around the table was only thinking about themselves, when that wasn't really the point of those meets. And you touched on it just now. Now that I think about it, why were they sitting there, and why did it feel like everybody was being very selfish? And the reason why is because those sort of very formal, structured networking breakfasts don't give people a chance to joke around and to break the ice properly and just get to know fun little facts about each other.
Here's a funny little anecdote for you. I was a member of BNI. I was a member of one of the most successful BNI groups in the country.
Didn't they all claim to be the most successful BNI group in the country?
It was based on turnover, and it had a very, very positive vibe, and people would look up to our group as a very friendly, supportive group. I mean, I hit lucky, really. And even then, it sort of, people enjoyed having me in the group. I came up with a slogan for the project I was working on, and within a few weeks, we have to do like a 1-minute presentation. But within that 1-minute presentation, I had the whole room chanting my slogan because I had turned it into a bit of entertainment. And it's sometimes it just needs that lighter touch. It just brings it all together. People need to come together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I think, because I was really, really thinking about things after we finished recording Wedding Tennis last week. And I just thought, eventually when the time, the climate, etc. permits us to, doing something like this in real life would be absolutely fantastic. It works online as well. It absolutely works online as well. But when we're able to sort of start getting back together again, something
even better.
Yeah, exactly. Something, like an event based around that sort of thing would be just fantastic, I think. And then it would be, right, I'm going to stop talking now because someone will take this idea off us and go run with it, and we'll talk about it another time. Just
for everybody's information, Wedding Tennis Summit has now just been registered. The domain has gone. No, it hasn't. I'm kidding, but it might. Don't search for it. It might.
Yeah, James is doing it right now, this minute.
Straight after this call.
I need to keep talking while. Yeah, exactly. No, do it now. I'll keep talking, and I've got you back. So speaking of in real life, I saw some sort of announcement. By the way, I've kind of been avoiding the news for the last month or so. That's probably why I'm a lot more positive than a lot of other people, because ignorance is total bliss. Like Cypher out of The Matrix when he's eating his steak.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, I kind of understand where he's coming from, although, I wouldn't sell my friends out in that way. Anyway, sorry, going down a movie rabbit hole, wrong podcast. So talking about real life, I think I saw an announcement that from the 21st of June, although they've delayed general lifting of restrictions, weddings will be allowed to go ahead without the 30-person restriction. You'll only be limited by the venue's ability to host however many people safely with social distancing and so on. Again, I'm going to put this to you because I get all sort of dog-like, very excited and like, oh my God, everything's going to come back. But then there's practical considerations with that. It isn't the way it's been framed. It's almost like wedding industry goes, yay, it's going to be a free-for-all again. Weddings are back to normal. But it's not quite that, is it? Is it?
When I looked at the announcement,
take the jam out of my donut.
Let's give it a good squeeze. So when I looked at the announcement, I thought, this is good news, but it might not necessarily be the news that people are looking for. And I was kind of a bit ambivalent about it, really. I went online the next day, quick scroll through Facebook. Oh my God, the rage. And I was like, okay, something's up. Something has gone wrong. This is not good. I think the problem is, the problem has been all along, is that these announcements are made, they're taken at face value and stripped of context. And I think once you start to apply those rules to a context, those rules do help some people, but they don't help everybody. And my friends were trying to get married in July, and their venue is run by the council. And they approached the council and in terror, really, because they'd been told that they could move their date without penalty if their wedding wasn't allowed to go ahead. But were they allowed to move their date if their wedding could go ahead, but heavily compromised? And they were terrified of that angle. But they approached them, and the venue were cool and said, the rules pertaining to us and our venue are you're allowed 50 guests. That's the cap. You have to have a drink service to table, so everybody has to be sat down, and there can be no dancing. And my friend's response was, that isn't the wedding that we planned.
Yeah.
And the venue said, you're totally right. We agree. And you're happy. We'd be happy to move it for you if you pay just a little bit more of the deposit. And they were over the moon, because they can go ahead and try to have that wedding day that they actually wanted. So yeah, it's up and down. And no dancing means, it's harder for bands. And there's so many suppliers who are still impacted by those restrictions still. And it's this carrot situation, isn't it? Of like, they think it's going to get better and then it's taken away from you and then it's back on and then no, it's back off. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult.
Yeah. And it makes that question about Chesney Hawkes, the one and only, versus D-Light's Groovers in the Heart.
Groovers in the Heart.
A bit redundant, doesn't it?
It really does. Unless you want to sing it in your bathroom to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Or can you imagine people who then persevere and grit their teeth and say, okay, fine, we'll just get on with the wedding. And then the DJ's sort of, playing all these bangers and people are literally just only able to shuffle their feet under a table and nod their heads and stuff.
My dad would be in his element. He's the best seat dancer I have ever seen in my life. He is incredible.
Brilliant. So yeah, so it's, so you're absolutely right. On the surface, it looks bright and breezy and wonderful, but then when you get into the actual detail of it, it's like when pubs kind of reopened.
Far more complicated.
Yeah, when pubs kind of reopened last September, I think it was, because we had our wedding anniversary, and so I booked our local, and first thing we realised is we couldn't take the dogs with us because of all of the COVID stuff, and so we got there, we queued up, it was freezing cold, so within 10 seconds my wife, who'd been looking forward to the first night out in months, was already bloody grumpy. Then you had to do the whole scanning your QR code thing. That didn't work. So then you had to fill out a form. We already had a table reserved, but that didn't seem to matter. Eventually we got in. Then we had to stand in another little holding area. Then we were shown to our table. And because of the layout, because they've obviously had to take out so many tables and the sofas and things to do the whole social distancing and put perspex screens in between everything, just the atmosphere of the pub was completely sucked out. And it was all not even table service. You had to scan a QR code again, which didn't work, on your table. And there was a very limited menu. So there's a couple of, there's certain things on the menu that we go to our pub every week for, and they weren't there. And yeah, so scan QR code, brings up a very limited menu, order your stuff, and then eventually it comes to your table magically. So yeah, that didn't work. So then we had to get the waitress over, and then she was wearing one of those big face mask things, the ones that look like they're about to start welding a car or something.
Right, the big plastic wraparounds.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got spit all on the inside of it as well.
Sneezes.
So, yeah, really hygienic. So she came over and we couldn't understand a word she was saying. So I said to her, listen, I give you permission and I will sign whatever you need me to sign to take that mask off and then you can serve us because I can't hear you and this is just not working. But she wouldn't. So, because of, hygiene and cleanliness and all of that stuff, eventually we managed to eat. We both decided over the course of the meal that we would never do this again. We're just going to wait for things to go back to proper normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, having gone through all of the rigours of hygiene and having our anniversary completely ruined because of all of this, and I'm not blaming our local at all. It's not their fault.
It's the situation.
It's the situation. But then she's at table number 15 with the payment machine. So obviously they stuck their card in, put their fingers all over it. She's then grabbed it back in her hands, and she just brings it straight over to us without sanitizing or anything. And I just said to her, I didn't ask her to sanitize it. I just paid. But I said to her straight afterwards, I said, do you realise that we've been through all this palaver and you've just brought me the same card machine that's been used by 3 different tables immediately before. So what was the point? And she said, "Yeah, you're right." She said it's insanity. And
Keeping up with all the rules and regs has been a challenge for
Exactly.
everybody at the best of times. But one of the funny things is, I know you mentioned like the limited menu. One of the best holidays I ever had was in Norway, where they have a very limited kind of selection of things on sale throughout the country, and I guess it's a supply issue. And if you want a bag of crisps, literally in the whole country, you can have like ready salted or paprika, and those are the two flavors of crisps you can get. And if you think about like, you know, in England where you've got like 50 different flavors, whatever you want, sausage and stuffing, you can get it. We're nuts.
Capital.
We're absolutely nuts. And I had hoped, I had a secret hope inside me that the pandemic was going to reduce like the level of insanity that we've reached in terms of like flavors and choice and options. I'm all for the ready salted or paprika option because it cuts out one decision process, you know, and it just makes life a bit less stressful. I looked at the chocolate aisle in Sainsbury's. In fact, I heard a foreign couple over talking. And they couldn't believe like the range of different chocolates that we have. Their minds were blown. And I was hoping that we'd kind of learn from that, but I don't think it seems to be sort of rolling back to how it used to be.
Yeah, Drew Baker, who's a chef, he won MasterChef a few years ago. He was on the episode before last. And he was just saying that that's one thing he doesn't like seeing is when he goes to a restaurant or a venue and there's just a huge array of different options. Because it shows
too much choice.
Too much choice confuses people. And also, for him, it shows a lack of confidence in what a company's doing. But you're right. It's just weird. Like, you go to buy a multi-pack bag of mini cheddars and... Mini cheddars and mini cheddars.
6-7 flavors.
Yeah. So now there's different flavors. So there's like mini cheddars with Marmite. There's mini cheddars,
and there's the baked ones. Baked, not what are they called? They're healthier.
Walker's Baked, I think.
Right.
And they come in an array of flavors. They started off in literally just 2 flavors, like salt and vinegar and salted, and that was it. And now they've expanded those. Now you've got peri peri Nando's flavoured Walker's crisps.
Of course.
That was the other thing I saw recently. Are you one of those people, though, when you see some of these new flavours, do you go, "Ooh, okay, I'll just try it," and then it kind of somehow ends up in your shopping trolley? Because I do that.
The problem,
my wife thinks I'm an idiot.
The problem I have, Roberto, it drives me up the wall, is I'll go in and I'll go, "Ooh, yeah, new flavour," but should I go with my trusty Rusty? It's like, if I have this new flavour, would I miss out on the enjoyment of the flavour that I really like? And it's sort of like, you get that tussle going on, and I hate the tussle. I'd rather it was just one flavour, and I'm like, okay, crisps, you know, and it's sort of, that would be a simpler decision-making process for me.
It's never good to find yourself in the middle of a supermarket aisle, especially when it's busy, faced with doing
dilemma.
Yeah, basically you're doing a lost benefit analysis on chocolate.
Which is going to make me happier.
Yeah, dear. That's it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I guess at a wedding, my point of the whole telling you about my anniversary thing was that I would just hate for all of that at a wedding, you know, table service and that sort of thing.
Right,
really,
yes.
The whole point of going to a wedding is you look forward to the buffet. Well, I do anyway.
So do I.
All I'm waiting for is everyone knows that I'm a cake monster. I'm just waiting for that damn cake to be cut. And anyone, I'm literally, my ears are on alert for anyone that's just refusing the cake politely because of a dietary reason or something. Because I'm just like, yeah, no problem. I'll have your portion. Bring it over here. It's great. And nicking cake off kids is the other thing I like to do as well, and I'm not ashamed at all. I don't feel guilty about it. So
would you finish a half-eaten piece of cake? There's the question.
So yeah, I would.
There we go.
I would.
Brilliant.
I would. Yeah, especially if
you're a good guest then. You're a good guest. No waste.
Yeah, well, I mean, that would be my primary thought, is that there are people starving in the world. I mean, you can't let food go to waste. But if it had a combination of light springy sponge, cream, jam, and then icing, then I wouldn't care. If someone had slobbered over it, it would probably end up in my mouth. So, yeah, it's fine.
It's good to know.
That sounds really rude, doesn't it? What's the... Can you remember the last wedding that you and Rachel attended? I just seem to have... I can't remember.
Yeah, but it was pre-lockdown, so it was very normal.
Yeah. You must miss it though. Do you miss being at a guest? Do you miss being at a wedding as a supplier more than you do being at a wedding as a guest, or do you much prefer to be a guest at a wedding rather than being a supplier at a wedding?
That's interesting. Very few of my friends are married, so I haven't been to a lot of weddings as a guest. It's wonderfully refreshing to go to a wedding as a guest, because if you've been a hands-on wedding supplier for many, many years, you've got this baked-in mental attitude of it feeling like going to work. You turn up at a wedding and you're immediately doing like shot recce, and you're trying to work out like where the angles are, and you're thinking about, in the ceremony, you're thinking about where the cameras need to go, or how low or how high to hide them from the guests, and you're doing all this kind of mental process, and there's a certain amount of stress involved in that because you're going through those processes. So it's wonderful for me to go to a wedding and just throw my arms up in the air and go, I don't care. I just don't care. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy it, and it's great.
So I'm one of those people, technically as a supplier, I should be able to go to, if I'm lucky enough to go to a wedding that I've done the suits for, I should be able to just go and forget about it because my job's already done before the wedding day. But I'm one of those people that if I'm at a wedding, so one of my closest friends from college, when she got married, there was a disaster in the kitchen with the cake. They were delayed bringing it out. Something hadn't been done correctly. I can't remember exactly what, but I'm one of those people that makes the ushers and bridesmaids look like they're completely effing useless. Because I'm just like, when I see a problem, I have to go and fix it. Mm-hmm. So I just roll my sleeves up. And I remember once, one of my best friends, when he got married, his best man turned round to me when we were in the toilets at one stage of the wedding, and he turned around and he said, "You're doing my job and you're doing all the ushers' jobs." And I just probably turned around, because this was about 13 years ago when I was younger and a lot more arrogant, and I probably just turned around to him and said something like, "Well, if you lot did your jobs in the first place, I wouldn't need to jump in, would I?" But I am Mr. Fix-It. So when a customer invites me to their wedding, having done all their suits and stuff, I will get there ultra early. I will make sure that I'm on hand to make sure people's ties are done up right, help them to get dressed and so on. And it's the weird thing. So like one of my friends, straight clients, Danny, who is famous in the adult film world, shall we say. That was a superb wedding to go to. I turned up early, so he sort of was wandering around the venue, and then he saw me and he said, "You're like 2 hours early." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "I'm here to get you and your best man dressed." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, we weren't expecting it. We can put a suit on ourselves, but I just wanted to kind of do that. So, and I enjoy doing it."
That's nice, and I think that kind of speaks to your level of professionalism, and obviously, you're very visually orientated as well. You want things to look right, especially when it comes to clothing, and I think what a treat to have somebody like that on hand.
Exactly. So there are two things for everybody listening to this episode. Number one, invite me to your wedding, because you will have an extra pair of hands it won't cost you anything but extra cake. So if you've not put...
Sometimes half-eaten cakes, it's not even a problem.
Half-eaten cake, yeah, exactly. Or any 5-year-olds that you've got that are just picking at cake. I don't understand children. They waste so much food. Stick me at the kids' table. That sounds really wrong. And I'll make sure that there's no food gone to waste. Secondly, any of James's unmarried friends that are listening, please get engaged and plan weddings so that James can go to more of them, because he really, really he loves you, and he really likes going to a good wedding. See? And maybe he can give you some visual tips on how to make it the most incredibly visually splendulous day. That's not even a word. Sounds like something out of Mary
It's
Poppins.
good though. It's a good word.
So James's
Splendulous.
friends who are not married, go and get married. Whether you believe in the institution of marriage or not, it's just an excuse to have a good party and for James to have a great time. There you go.
Great catharsis for me. Completely.
Exactly. Yeah. So when we meet again on this podcast in future, we'll see how successful that plea for help was or wasn't, and how good our friends are.
And my new breakout business, Splendulous Weddings.
That too, exactly. That domain, by the way, is being... Yeah,
it's also gone.
It's gone. Yeah, you can't...
It's gone.
That's
Taken.
it. James has just taken that one as well, so just don't bother. James, where can people find you?
Right, so interwebwise, please visit the website. My website is www.Wedding Espresso, and that's espresso as in coffee.
Not the Croydon way, espresso.
Espresso. It isn't espresso, it's espresso. Yeah.
Wedding Espresso.
Yeah, so
and
check out the website and have a look.
And do you do Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter and all of that stuff?
I do very casual. I'm not very good on social media. I do very casual social media. So anything solid or serious that I'm going to put out there will be available on the website.
There we go. So www.weddingespresso.com. I have to really work hard on that one because I am from Croydon. So we do say espresso. And the other thing we do...
Hey, if I could rewind the clock or buy a DeLorean with a Mr. Fusion, I'd go back and change it.
Yeah.
For that very reason. It would just be
wedding
mocha or wedding coffee.
Hang on a minute. You better buy those domains as well while you're at it.
Just keep it simple.
Wedding Cappuccino, weddinglatte.com. Wedding
Yeah, that would
Espresso.
work.
I think Wedding Espresso had the perfect ring though, because an espresso is very small. You know,
This is right. It's a shot of energy. That's
just a little shot
exactly.
of energy. Exactly. Weddingespresso.com. You can also buy James's wonderful book, Carpe Diem Wedding Baby! On all the usual places that you can get good books from. Is that right?
It is. Carpe Wedding Diem Baby is actually available free from our website, or you can go and buy my book that I wrote, which is Life Happens, Weducation Helps, and that's available on Amazon.
Brilliant. I'll put the links to all of those in the show notes for everybody. Please go check James's publications out because they're amazing. And if you're a prospective bride and groom, they are invaluable resources, but not the typical kind of boring, just talking at you type. I mean, these are written with passion, with love, with humour, with real stories, and they're very relatable as well. And if you're a wedding supplier listening to this, just go snap up a few copies because they make great gifts for people who have chosen to put their wedding business with you. James, thank you so much. Give my love to Rachel. It's been wonderful to have you on. I hope you will join me again at some point in the future once we've got all those domains up and running and we've got the new sort of, networking events business off and running. Thank you so much for everything that you do, really. I think you underestimate the impact that you have had on people like me who are lucky enough to know you. Because those times when certainly I've been feeling at my lowest, the emails that you send out, the letters that you send out, and these ideas that you continuously keep coming up with give people like me that much needed little shot of espresso and energy that we need to pick ourselves up and get going again. So thank you so much for that.
Bobby, I'm lost for words. I'm humbled, and it's an honour to be able to help anybody anytime. So if I've helped you, then thank you for conveying that to me, and thank you for the opportunity to jump on the podcast. I've had a great time. It's been wonderful.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. Hopefully we'll get you some wedding invites and some more book sales as well. So that's it from me. That's it from James. Thank you so much for joining us for another week. I'll put the links to James's publications and the website in the show notes for you. We'll be back in about a week's time. Again, I have no idea who I'm talking to next because there are just so many bookings that have been made for people to get onto this thing. But thank you so much for lending us your ears. You can find me on all the usual social media links. I will put those in the show notes as well. Please, if you love this episode, please remember to rate and review. It helps people not only find this podcast and help us to keep growing, but it also helps people to find my wonderful guests like James, and it helps to support them as well in what they're trying to do. Thanks very much. See you on the next one.